Good Monday morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with the daily technical update. And what a morning on this Monday, the 5th of August. We'll start with the Nikkei today. There will be no single stocks because there are a lot of stuff to talk about. We'll start with Nikkei today. Here's the Nikkei future traded on Osaka, and it has already changed to tomorrow, so to speak, in terms of sentiment and all. But we could see a massive sell-off. We were down 12-14% early this morning, and it actually hit these support levels here at 30,400. You can see the back from last year a couple of times, and also there was a little bit here, but these are the interesting ones. This is the most interesting support at the moment, and you can also see how strongly it is bouncing in continued trading, and it could bounce all the way up to 33,870. I'm not quite sure, but we have been in panic mode. I said to some of my colleagues before I left Friday that all market crashes, not all market, the last big one in 1987, if anyone remembers that, actually started in Japan. Little did I know that it was going to happen this morning in Japan. So we can see here also the Japan 225 CFD is also around these levels here, and we can just very quickly add a horizontal line. So that didn't drop as much, but it was very close to around those 30,265. In the US futures trading, we could see that the here's the US 500 mini futures. It's dipped to support at 5,205, just a little bit lower, 5,200. That should be observed. And if we're looking at the US 500 CFD, 5,190 dip just below that. If we have renewed selling, you can also see it's bouncing a little bit. We are in a negative sentiment, so we are in a downtrend, and there is a further downside risk. So we'll see what happens when market opens later today in US, if there will be a fire sale on the most of the biggest stocks. We'll get an indication when pre-market will open. We have S&P. The CAS, of course, it hasn't changed since Friday, but we have the levels here we talked about it last week, 5,250. That could be tested. Looking at the US, the Nasdaq 100 future touched the support at 17,400. It could dip lower to 17,000 level, 17,100, where we also have some support. But there's some strong support, and these are levels back from April. But it is bouncing quite strongly, as you can see here at the moment. We were down 5-6% early trading in the futures, but now we are only down 3.25%, and we can see the levels here on the US 100 CFD back above 17,787, where we have some support resistance. So later today we'll see. I'll do updates on various instruments later today in writing, but this is what is currently happening. We have the Nasdaq that closed the CAS index 18,333, but look at for levels 17,800 and 16,963 around those levels. So we are around 17,000. That is the risk. I'm not saying we are going to move there, but we did have a warning here, as you could see on the 1st of August. With this sell-off right there. Looking at the European markets, that has also been moved quite a bit, and here I'll take the CAS index because it's been trading for about a little bit more than an hour now. We have EUROSTOXX 50 that opened around 4,600, a dip below support here at and let's move in 4,544 comes from these peaks here. There is downside risk to 4,400 level, which is a much stronger support area down here, 4,400, 4,300, and these are the levels to keep an eye on. However, we are bouncing. If it can get back above 46.75 and close above that, well, then we can see another or further relief rally. But let's see about that. DAX touched this morning straight on. You see it actually dipped down to close the gap, but in order to really close the gap, it needs to close below 17,118. So that's it touched it and then it bounced. So let's see where we end today. That'll be key. We are in a negative sentiment with a further downside risk, and looking at both the weekly and the daily chart, we can see how heavy it looks at the moment. We are in a bearish trend, but again, there can be some real relief rallies, but do be careful about buying too much into this. If you do, then have your stops ready, and you have just for educational purposes, you can see well, if one goes long here on the DAX, well, then the stop will be lows today. And the same picture on the Amsterdam index that actually opened lower, just around the 849 support. And if we just quickly look at the Netherlands CFD/future, 845 touched it right there, 200 moving average. But let's move back to the cash index, because that's for me it's much more interesting. If it can close today back above 858, well, then it will maybe over the next couple of days try to close this gap here, and that will be key for the next couple of days. Can it actually close that? Then there could be further upside potential towards 900. If it fails to do that, well, then we can slide lower. But the 200 moving average is giving some support. Otherwise, we have the next gap support down here around 831. The CAC 40, we need to zoom out a little bit. So we are in this range here. Didn't really touch any support. It almost dipped to the 7,000 level. Broke. We had a warning Friday that something was cooking, and we gap lower. It also needs to close this gap here for further bouncing potential or rebounding potential. If it takes out the lows today, well, then expect further selling pressure down to 6,900, 6,800. And finally, on the Swiss market, almost touching the 200 moving average, we have excuse me, 11,595. Where it's dancing around at the moment. It will probably try to close this gap here. I don't think it will succeed, at least not today. But if it does the next few days, well, then it will be a strong signal. However, if it takes out the lows today, well, then expect further selling pressure down to 11,250, 11,000 level in this range here. We are in a negative sentiment, as you can see, so there is definitely a downside risk. Moving on to FX market, and of course there's been a lot of movements there also. Here we have euro dollar, and that is actually one of the currency pairs that has moved the least. But we saw already Friday after the unemployment numbers coming out, a massive move in euro dollar off the 61.8 retracement here, just around 107.25-ish level, moving all the way up to the 786 retracement at 109.11, and now it is knocking on the resistance at 109.78, around the 109.80. It has now potential to higher levels. I think we'll see it touching 110. I think this will break it. We are in a positive sentiment. There's no divergence. I think we will break that level and push above 110 to 110 and a bit, possibly 110 and a half. Could expect a little bit of setback before the move, but we are in a bullish trend. Euro sterling also really on the move after taking out 85 Friday, moved all the way up to 85.35, and now pushing above the 200 moving average. We are in a positive sentiment, so there is potential higher for euro sterling. Also, we can see at the weekly chart, it's starting to break this falling trend here. Potential up to 86 and a quarter, maybe even 86.50 in the coming days and maybe weeks. That's the thing. We never know how fast it will move. 127 and the 786 retracement here is key. You can see very key, strong support. RSI is still in a positive sentiment. We should see a push higher, but I'm not quite sure we'll get that actually. If it takes 127, which is not unlikely, well, then we have a sell-off possibly down to 126 area, where we have some support areas down around these levels. And then we come to it with the yen pairs, and we really have to look a bit further back to see some support. So here we have some support levels, and you can see how I draw these support levels. It is around, not necessarily the lowest level, but sometimes you have to take that that into account too. But also where there's a cluster of trading, so to speak, and where you also have a little bit of a highest level in a little bit of a correction phase here. So we are actually in this consolidation or turning around levels here between 140.80 and 142.85, and that's where we're trading at the moment. You can see RSI at 12. That is extreme. Remember, RSI can't go lower than 0, and I have never seen 0 before, so that's basically impossible. We are in massively oversold mode. I think we will see a little bit of a counter reaction here the next couple of days where it can bounce higher. This is not a buy recommendation on dollar yen, by the way, because there's significant downside, of course. But you will see just in a few couple of weeks, we have seen all this uptrend here unwinded. And we can see, well, we are back to where we were around New Year's. 140.25 was the low back then. It could be tested. Euro yen also massive sell-off, dipping below 155 support. There is risk down to 153 if it takes out the lows today, and you don't need a close for that. If it takes out again, we will see renewed selling pressure towards 153, possibly lower to 150.75 maybe, but that will be a massive sell-off. But when we have these panic modes, it's really hard to say. But remember, do not panic. Have your stops close, because let the other guys panic in this market. We have Aussie yen. That was actually the biggest move. I thought it was an error, but you will see we have 9.6 on the RSI. I can't recall I've seen it this low, maybe ever. So massively oversold. We have some support here at 91.80, but otherwise then we have to look for support in these correction phases here, where we have some, you see it dipped down there, and there was a peak here. So support around 90 on the Aussie yen. And we could see, we have already seen a bit of a bounce as we zoom in here. We can see that it could bounce further in the coming hours, but it could also renew selling pressure. Let's see. But if we move back above 93.70, well, then we could see further bounce on Aussie yen. Sterling yen dipped almost down to 178.75 in this area here. We are actually almost touched what, 180 with just a few cents off it, 180. So that seems to be the case at the moment. And I bet you it was RSI was below 10 here this morning. Now it's just above 10, as you can see here. And we do have a bit of a bounce. If it takes out lows today, expect the selling pressure down to around 176.25. Aussie dollar dipped down to the support, and we talked about this Friday, 63.60, and then a massive bounce. I think selling pressure will come back a little bit. We are in a downtrend. You can also see all the moving averages are pointing lower, declining at the moment, and we have the RSI also pointing to lower levels. So we could see another pressure towards that support here, and if it takes it out once again, well, then expect lower levels towards 60 to 70. But again, there will be some bounce all around. Dollar Canada spiked a little bit higher to the 139.50 level, and this is like a shooting star. Maybe that's it, and we should see a pressure towards the support at 137.85. If it takes out that, then we could see a drop to 137. We are still in an uptrend, however, but it looks a little bit toughish at the moment. Euro Swiss, massive sell-off. Also, we have even dipped below this level around New Year's, around January, below 92.50, also a bounce. If it can stay above 93, well, then we could see further bouncing towards a 94.60 level in the coming days. But it is really critical levels. It tested there, but it did spike back above it, or bounce back above it. We have the dollar Swiss also massive sell-off. Through that support right there at 85.77. and I will not put it at the end, but I will add 2 here. You can see where we also have market turning around, a few spikes down. So there's risk down to around 84. That is the key. We are in a negative sentiment, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see it low. But if it can close above 86, well, then we can see further bounce towards 87 in coming days. Finally, on the dollar index. Right now, as we speak, we are at 102.32 support. That little spike down here, it went straight through the support at 102.77. If we do close below 102.32 today, well, then there's further downside potential. And let's just take this one and say, okay, we have some consolidation area here. The lowest part of that could be 101.62, and if it's not the strongest one, I will admit the strong one is down here, 100.32. But again, if it does close above, we could see a little bit of a bounce. Moving on to the commodities market, we have gold. Well, there was a bit of volatility, but it didn't really react much. It's almost touched the previous all-time highs at 24.84, but now it's trading around this 24.30 level here. We are still in an uptrend, but it is struggling a little bit for upside momentum. If it takes out 24.84, well, then expect to move up to around 25.50 in that area. Key support 23.53, so we could be stuck range bound here for a bit. If we are looking at the silver market or the silver spot, key level to look out for is the lows here around 27.40. If it takes out that lows there from about last week, well, then expect a sell-off down to around 26. And we are in a negative sentiment, and there's no divergence, so we could see that materialize. It needs to get back above 29.45 for upside potential. Just very quickly on the platinum market, it's taking out the lows here, so we are building a downtrend with a potential down to short term to around 900 level, as you can see here at what market turning around, so around 900 there. Copper, the lows from the past couple of weeks around 403.25, very close to be testing again this morning, just a few cents off it, 10 cents to be exact. Well, then we could see a sell-off down to 383.40 around that level if it takes it out. If it takes out to the upside at 422.30, well, then a push up to 436, 440 could be seen. On the energy market, we have the WTI testing support at 72.41. You can see where that support starts for, originates from down here in February and again here in June. And if it takes it out, well, and doesn't need to close below, it takes it out, then we're looking at 70.5, possibly below 70. We are in a bearish trend on the crude oil contracts. We have the Brent currently testing 76, potential down to 72, 71 area, 72.5, 70 in the coming days. I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, they're very volatile, I expect that. Finally, let's have a look at the US 10-year Treasury yields, and let's have a look at the weekly. You can see it spiked lower at around 366, and we had a little bit of support here at 363, 64. And if it can get back above 377, well, then we can see a little bit of a push higher in the coming days. And let's just round off with the 2-year yield while we are at it. Spiking lower also this morning. 356 is the next support that could be touched. But also here, expect a little bit bounce. We are massively oversold. All right, that's all for today. That's a long one. Sorry about that, but there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I will send out more reports on the yen pairs and also some of the big major indices. Have a nice day and happy trading, and keep your stops tight. Thank you.